Welcome to Podcast Answers, the show where I help you start and grow your podcast, answering any podcasting questions along the way. That's right. Today we are talking about a topic that is fun. It's something that I think people forget about a lot. And so we're going to be talking about tech checks. What does it mean to have a tech check and why you should have one and all of that good stuff. So welcome back, guys. If you've never joined me, again, I just try to answer podcasting questions and help people grow and start their podcast. And so this day is no different. And it's been a while, guys, since I've done this. Summers are really busy. And so one of the things that I do preach is to try and stay on a schedule with your podcast, which means you should be out there and you should be doing the thing week in, week out, so that way people know when to expect your shows. People build you into their lives, and I've not done a great job at that. I have really not done a great job at that. I have, the last couple of weeks have just been interesting for me. I've been out and about and not being able to get into the studio. But the last episode we did was with Laura from Shure, talking about different mics that you can use for your podcast. And so that's a great episode. If you've not had a chance to check that out, go ahead and check it out. Today, though, we're talking about all things tech check. So essentially, what is a tech check, right? Well, and I do want to say this before we actually start. So I've been doing something called Summer of Live, and I've been doing it on the Podcast Answers YouTube channel as well as my own personal YouTube channel. And essentially, I'm just going live. I'm trying to go live a lot. It's not every day of the summer, but it is trying to be as much as I can. And I did actually cover this topic yesterday on that show, but I wanted to get it out to you because I know not everybody who listens to this podcast also checks out the YouTube channel, which if you've not, go ahead and go over to our YouTube channel, because we do have a YouTube channel, and that's at podcastanswers.com/YouTube. And you can see that, and you can go ahead and see our YouTube channel there, and all of the things that we produce at the YouTube channel is over at podcastanswers.com/YouTube. But the Summer of Live is essentially just me going live with different topics and different subjects of live streaming. And so I talked about this a little bit yesterday on the show, but I wanted to talk about it here on this podcast because, again, I know that not everybody that listens to this podcast is on our YouTube channel. So what is a tech check? First off, what is a tech check? Check. Just like it sounds, it's a time that you check your technology. And this really is two different topics, really. Because if you're a solopreneur, a solo podcaster like I am for the most of the time, it's going to mean one thing. But if you have guests on or a remote host, it's going to mean something different. And so I'm going to talk about both of those things today and the differences between them and what you can expect with a tech check. So realistically, what a tech check is just that. You're checking your technology. And if you're a solo podcaster, what that means is having a rundown, a pre-show rundown. And really this applies to both things. You'd probably want to do this even if you had a guest. You'd want to do your own tech check as well as your guest's tech check. And so if you've ever flown with a pilot, and I'm not talking about commercially, like on United or American or whatever. I mean, they do this too, but you don't get to see it. If you've ever flown with a pilot, you've ever had a friend that's a pilot and you've flown with them, they have a rundown check sheet, a pre-flight check sheet that they run down. They check their engines, they check their whatever. I don't know. I'm not a pilot, but I know that I've seen it. I have friends who are pilots, and they have a check sheet that they run down, and they basically say, okay, this is good, this is good, this is good, this is good. Now we can fly. Now that we've done all of the checks and all of the things, we know that we're going to be good, and we know that we're going to be able to not crash because we've done all of these pre-flight check things. Now we can go. And so those are the same things that you're going to do here. So for me, and this may look differently depending on what kind of hardware you have, but the first thing that I would say is make sure your mic is not muted, right? I mean, when you go to start your recording, make sure that you're actually recording, not just talking to yourself, because there's nothing worse. Okay, there's a few things worse, but nothing worse than finishing your recording and realizing that your mic was actually muted. Or you go to hit the stop button for the stop recording and it turns red and to indicate, hey, I'm now recording, because you didn't actually hit the record button. So you've talked for 10, 15, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, and you don't actually have the recording because you failed to unmute yourself or you failed to press the record button. So that's something you want to check. Now, again, if you check your levels. So if you on your soundboard, make sure that your levels are all hitting in the right spot before you go live or hit the record button. You're going to want to make sure that when you're looking at your meters, you're hitting the right spot, that those are all the same, that your music is good, that all of your stuff is good. If you're live streaming it, make sure that you're going to be live streaming, make sure everything is scheduled. I'm live streaming and video and audio at the same time on this show. So on this show, I have audio and video both streaming. And if you're in a new podcast app, you can listen to the show in one of the new podcast apps as I'm recording, which is a lot of fun because I'm coming straight to you, to your podcast app. Or if you want to watch me on YouTube, I'm on YouTube. But make sure all of those things are set up, ready to go. Make sure that if you're doing video too, your scenes are good, your camera's good, your cone of cleanliness is good. So those of you who do video, you may have a really messy room, but the cone of cleanliness is that area that your camera sees. Make sure that the area that your camera sees is clean. Make sure that it's not going to look messy. And so those are the type of things that you're going to tech check, right? You're going to go ahead and you're going to say, okay, I got all these things good to go and I'm ready to go. Now, what you can do and what I would definitely recommend doing is, if you're using, like I said, you can use anything really. You can use a note, you can use a note on Evernote or the Notes app on your phone or your computer or whatever you want to do. You can use those things as you go live, or you can use that as a check to make sure that you're actually checking those things right and you're getting all of it and you're ready to go. You can use a note like that. But you can also, if you're live streaming, use something, well, I call them mechanicals or something along the lines of that. So a scene essentially in your profile for your streaming software. And again, I use Ecamm, but I have something called infos. So I have profile infos, and then I also have a checklist. So I have this checklist that says, okay, here's what I want to do. I want to hide my menu bar. I want to set to the streaming profile. I want to turn my Pro Mouse on. I want to do mic check input. I have a few things that I can go through and make sure that I actually have that ready to go, that I'm ready to go. So if you're watching on YouTube right now, this is part of my list. I'm still working on coming up with a better list for everything. This is mostly just for streaming, but I'm coming up with a list to everything. But I keep that as an extra scene in my live streaming software, and so that way I have it ready to go, and I'm ready to actually do the thing. I'm ready to actually stream. So now the next thing is, okay, so you've tech checked yourself, which is great. Now you want to tech check your guests too, because if you have guests coming on, whether that be through Zoom or through Ecamm interview mode or through StreamYard or through Riverside or any number of things that you can live stream on, you're going to want to tech check your guests too. And so tech checking your guests means coming in before the time. So if you're going to go live, and this is really important for those things, if you're going to go live, right? So those of us who live stream either audio or video or both, it's important to make sure that we're if we go live when we say we're going to go live, but we want to have our guests there beforehand. So if you go live at 8:30, you want to make sure that your guests are going to come on at 8:15, and tell them this. Tell them that you're not going live right away, that you're going to do a tech check. So we're going to show up for tech check. And this can be right before the show, or it can be a day before or whatever. I recommend before the show, right before the show, because something may have changed. They may be in a different spot. The lighting may have changed. The mic may come unplugged. I suggest doing it right away, like right before the show. And so tell them, hey, come on 15 minutes beforehand, or whatever you decide is the appropriate amount of time for you. But for me, I say 15 minutes. And then what I do is I say, okay, we're going to check and make sure that your audio sounds good. We're going to make sure that you are coming in loud, that we're matching levels, that our levels are close to the same on the mixer board. So if you have a mixer board that has a couple different channels on it, you want to see that you're actually hitting about the same spot on those mixer boards so that the sound levels are close to the same when you're done. And then you want to also make sure that they fit into your scene well if you're doing video. So make sure that they're centered, because if they're coming in centered in their camera or off to the side on their camera, but then you crop their camera down, they're not going to be in the frame. So there are some things that you can do. You can ask them to adjust or whatever, but you want to make sure that their levels sound good, that they're not using a wireless headphones, that they're going to be good to go. So anything that you need to make sure is good to go for your guests, you want to make sure is good to go for your guests, right? And so that would be, making sure that they sound good, that they look good, that everything is good. But then also making sure that they know how the format of your show is going to be. If you're going to talk for 10 or 15 minutes before you bring them on, let them know that. Let them know that they are going to be waiting 10 or 15 minutes, 5 minutes or whatever. Or if you're going to get right to the interview, then you get right to the interview. That's more of a flow thing as opposed to a tech check, but you're going to want to do a tech check every time. Tech check your equipment, tech check their equipment every time. And so what that really means is, making sure that you're good to go, right? I mean, you want to make sure that you guys sound the best, your guest sounds the best, and knows what to expect. And then if there's not, you have that time built in there that you can make adjustments. So if their levels aren't good, you can recommend that they do something else. You can recommend that they get a different mic. Or if it's noisy in the environment that they're at, you can say, hey, maybe can you go away from this coffee shop that you're sitting in? Or can you go away from the area that you are? Can you do this? Can you take the dog out so that they don't interrupt us or whatever? You're the host. You can tell them how you want them to sound, right? This is your show. This is your podcast. This is your YouTube stream. Make sure that they sound good and look the best, because really that comes back on you. That comes back on you to have a great looking show and a great sounding show. So make sure that they know that and can do that. And then again, I realize that everybody has different technology. They may not have a professional video camera. Heck, in fact, I don't right now. It's one of the things that I would like to get eventually, but I don't. I don't have it. But they may not have a professional camera and it may not look great. So you may want to give them suggestions on how to make their show look better. So those are the things that you can do for tech checks. And I recommend you do this every single episode before you go live, because they may not be right. They may not come in good, and you want to sound the best for your show. So guys, I can help you become a better podcaster. I can help you start your podcast. I can help you learn Ecamm. Ecamm is the software that I use to stream. And right now they're actually having a sale. And if you want to check it out, you can go to podcastanswers.com/Ecamm. That's ECAMM through the end of July. You get 30% off if you are a first-time customer. And so again, podcastanswers.com/Ecamm, ECAMM. That link is also in the show notes to this episode. But you can get 30% off of an annual or monthly subscription to that. And it is really the best streaming software. But if you want help learning Ecamm or learning how to podcast or making your podcast sound better, you can also hire me to do one-on-one consulting. And you can find that over at podcastanswers.com/contact. And that'll get you in contact with me, and we can set up a time to do a one-on-one Zoom call so that I can help get your podcast set up great, because I love helping people do their podcasts. So Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. I love to help people get their podcasts going. And again, this is why I do this show, because I've been podcasting since 2007 and I love it. And I think everyone should be doing a podcast. And so if you want to get your podcast started, contact me. Again, you can contact me at podcastanswers.com/contact, and that'll get you in contact with me, and we can set up a one-on-one consulting. So guys, I just really encourage you to go out there and see what you can do this week to make your podcast better. And then doing a tech check will help with that. And so go ahead and do your tech check. Have a great week. Keep podcasting.